Hi everyone, my name is JD and this is my channel Frost and Forest. Today I am going to be doing a haul video. I have gotten some new decks in over the last few months, and so I wanted to share some of them. And one of the things that I found kind of interesting is that some of the decks that I got in were just like instant favorites. I felt really like I just wanted to use them right away. I was really excited about them. I felt like I got them right away. But then some of the ones that I got in, I am a little bit less sure about. And so I want to share the decks that I got and talk through, what I'm thinking about, why I like them or why I'm a little bit less sure about them. And then especially for the ones that I am less sure about, I would love it if you all could give me some ideas, because I don't like to write decks off right away, but I also don't want to keep decks in my collection that are not decks that I'm going to use. And so, it's just kind of finding that balance. And so I'd be super curious to hear some of your thoughts. And then the other thing that I'll say is that, I'm a new and growing channel. And so I remembered to say it in the beginning instead of the end. So that's fun. But I am a new channel and I am trying to grow. So if at the end of this video you enjoy it, I would love it if you could give it a like, and I would love it if you could subscribe to my channel. Now that I said that, let's look at some fun decks. So the first one that I'm going to talk to you all about today is the Unveiled Tarot. This deck is relatively new to me. I have not had it for that long. It is a mass market deck, and as you can see, I think one of the things that makes this deck super unique is that it has sort of a whole image here, obviously, but then it has sort of this panel that like shows a deeper story to what the deck is talking about. So for example, with this Devil card, which is something that really struck me right away, is that, they look like a perfectly happy family, but there is sort of that secret devil energy that you don't always see under the surface of a perfect family. And so a lot of cards strike me that way. Like this Mob card, it looks like a group of really, really angry people, but then you have that one person who deep down is just afraid, and like or at least that's what I get from it, is fear. And so it just really, I think, gives a lot of depth to this deck. So like Four of Cups, that's often the card of, feeling unsatisfied. But this person is barely keeping their head above water. And so, yeah, that would be unsatisfied, but also to me suggests that there's something deeper going on. And so that's just why I think that this deck is really cool, is because it just is really, really deep. And so this is a new deck that I got that I am very excited about and I have really enjoyed using. One of the things I will say about it though is I actually kind of, for this deck, feel like the guidebook doesn't do it justice. There's a lot of depth and these cards make me feel a lot of things, but then when I read the guidebook, it doesn't quite do it justice. And so for example, the Strength card, I love this Strength card. You have someone that is in the hospital and they're struggling, and but they have this like lion inside them because they are just scared and struggling, and it just, for me, that makes me feel a lot of things around that Strength card. But then to kind of get back to my point, when you read the guidebook, it doesn't feel like it does these cards fully justice. So like the Strength card, it's a violent world. Passionate conflict and open aggression present themselves at every turn. But with your strength, you can tame violent forces and calm chaotic situations. With confidence and compassion and love, you can accomplish nearly anything. At times, you may even appear to be a miracle worker. You can stop the bleeding and find the cure for the most hopeless cases. Not only this, but you also get others to join you. The greatest strength of all is to get those others to believe. Your self-confidence, courage shows that they too can be brave. I can't becomes I can. Do not be afraid to show your strength, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional. It should not be a shallow show of strength simply meant to impress. It should be an aid and an inspiration. Okay, so that one was better, if I'm being honest, than I thought it was. Okay. That full card feels a little bit too relevant to right now. But anyway, moving on. So maybe it is just the minors that don't feel like they have, quite been do it justice. I don't know. Maybe it was just some cards that I was picturing quite a bit. Or like picturing the meanings or really identifying with the meanings, that the guidebook entries didn't feel like they quite did the card justice. But I do feel like, at least for me, this is a deck that I would not need to use the guidebook for at all, because I think the cards do a really good job of saying what they need to say. And I think that this is a really great deck for sort of going based on intuition instead of, I think there's a lot of depth and you can just sort of read these cards intuitively. So yeah, this is a tarot deck that I am really enjoying. I think it's kind of interesting that like some of the panels sort of are a nod to the RWS, like they look like the RWS cards. And I think that that's an interesting way to sort of bring that into a more modern interpretation. So I think that that's cool. But yeah, this is a new deck that I have been really enjoying and feels very timely and just gives me all the feels. So this is the Unveiled Tarot. So then the next mass market deck that I got recently is the When Women Had Wings Tarot. I'm going to be honest with you all. This is one of the decks I'm less sure about. And it is still in order because I have been so unsure about it. It is one that, I think was very popular a little while ago. I didn't get it right away because I was kind of unsure about it, but it was on sale at one point, and so I decided to get it because it's kind of, on the higher end of mass market decks. And so, I decided this was the opportunity to get it. And I will say that, and again, if you love this deck, please, please continue to love this deck. This is just my opinion and it's just my perspective, and everybody has very different opinions on tarot, and it's part of why it's so amazing to have so many different decks out there, is because everybody can find a deck that they absolutely love, and I think that that's great. So take all of my thoughts as, a very personal perspective on this, and not a judgment on the deck as a whole. But for me, I'm not very sure about this deck, because one of the things that I will say is when I opened this deck, I was actually a little bit disappointed. The images, when you see them in video, I have watched walkthroughs of this deck, they just feel like so beautiful and vibrant, and the colors just in person felt a little bit flat to me. I don't know if that's fair or not. So yeah. And the other thing I'll say about this deck is it doesn't exactly feel cohesive to me. It feels like, it's sort of a collage style from, a bunch of different places. And so like, we have some people like this that look more like a statue. We have some real people here. We have some people that look like 2000s digital art people. And so And like, again, here's another statue person. And so it just, this deck doesn't feel as cohesive to me. Now, it's really, really beautiful. And like, there are some cards in this deck that I absolutely love. Like this Four of Cups, as an example. I think that this Four of Cups is beautiful. And it is one of the reasons why I bought this deck, is because I love the snow. I love the outdoor. I love the Four of Cups feeling of, you know, just being in that funk. That brings that feeling out to me. But like, when you look at this person versus this person versus this person, they to me feel like people from different worlds. And I don't know if I can get over that or not. You know what I mean? But like, again, this Eight of Cups, I think, is a beautiful Eight of Cups card. I think I like snowy scenes. I think that that's one thing we're learning from this. But, you know, it just, I don't know, man. But at the same time, you know, when I'm laying cards out like this next to each other, it feels more okay to me. And like, there is some like age diversity in this deck, which I always like. I like some good crone energy to come into it. And so, yeah, speaking of crone energy, there we go. And so this is one that I'm a little bit more unsure about. And so I would be super curious to hear your all opinion in the comments. Is this a deck you love? Do you feel like it's not cohesive? Or does it, when you're laying down cards, does it just work for you? It is a deck I want to like. It just didn't have that fire or that like connection when I first pulled it out. So I'm just not sure. So yeah, that is the second deck. So the next deck that I'm going to talk to you all about is the Phantom Queen Tarot. This is a Kickstarter that I got, and I haven't seen many people talk about it, so I might show you all a little bit more. It comes in one of those amazing fold-out boxes, which is always awesome. It's a great guidebook that has, you know, a page for each of the cards. It also has some spreads. It also talks about astrology and numerology and some symbology, and has some spells. And so it's a mighty little guidebook for, you know, kind of that little white book that's more awesome than a little white book. So there's that. This one was also really awesome because it came with red gilding. That was an extra thing that the creator felt pretty passionately about putting on, so decided to have it. And these are the beautiful backs. So like I said, that this is a Kickstarter that was done by C.A. Mallard. This is the same creator that did the Light Sprite Tarot, and also did, what is it called? Also did the Elemental North deck as well. And so this is her newest deck, and it is meant to be sort of a deck for the Morrigan. And so like the majors kind of focus on the Morrigan, but then the minors focus on different aspects of the Morrigan. And so like the cups are the suit of eels, and then the pentacles are the suit of like heifers or cows. The wands are the suit of wolves, and then the swords are the suit of crows. Which again, I don't know a ton about the Morrigan, but my understanding is that those are all animals that have some kind of connection to who the Morrigan is as a goddess. And so I got this deck and I backed this deck because, one, I really like the creator and some of the other projects that they've done, but also I really like decks that, and I know this is kind of weird, but I really like decks that have that sort of background image and then are layered with other images on top. And so I like the way that this sort of feels naturey and open in the background And then you have sort of like the layered art pieces on top, which in this case is kind of these shadow figures that relate to the Morgan, which I think is awesome. And so, you know, when I got this deck, I was really excited about it. But my biggest issue with it is I am not good with decks that don't have faces. I have a lot of trouble with it. It makes me, you know, a little uncomfortable. And I would bet that there is, you know, some shadow work that could be done there. But just in general, I don't like decks that don't have a lot of faces. And so that is the biggest thing that's difficult for me for this deck, is that there aren't faces on people. And like there are a little bit, like if you, I don't even know if you guys can see this. Hold on. Like if we really zoom in, you can kind of see like the contours of a face a little bit. But it's just not a lot there. And so I really want to love this deck, but that is one of the things that I'm struggling with, is the lack of faces. Because like, just look at that, you know, it's just not a face. And I was hoping that when I backed this deck, you know, maybe if it was connected to a goddess energy, it would maybe be more okay. But I just immediately noticed that when I got this deck, that I was kind of hoping I wouldn't pull people cards. I wanted to pull these other cards. I didn't want to pull people cards, which is, you know, not a great thing for a deck. So yeah, I would be curious if you all have any ideas, because I really, really, really want to love this deck. But the face thing is kind of hard for me. And so it's something I'm going to probably have to keep thinking about. But this is a great deck. I'm really happy that it came to be, and that it is a deck, you know, out in the world now. And I do think the artist did a great job. You know, I love that the cups are kind of like skulls. And I love that the wands are wolves. And just, I like this deck a lot. I guess time will tell if the face thing is a deal breaker for me with this deck. Then the next deck is kind of feels like in that same sort of, I don't know, vein of decks or genre of decks. But it is the Wisdom of the Crow Tarot. And so this is a deck. I think the backs are really beautiful. It does have gilding. The gilding is not my favorite gilding. It's a little pokey. I do think it's one of those things that as I shuffled it more, it would be a little less pokey. But yeah, this is just a deck that I absolutely love. And as soon as I got it, I started using it a ton. It just has this very much like almost a folk magic-y feel to me. I really like the art style. It is, of course, perfect for this time of year. This definitely feels like a fall deck. And so, you know, this is a deck that obviously is kind of an RWS leaning deck that focuses on crows, although we do have, you know, some people in there as well. But then it's also kind of interesting because then the minors are a little bit different. They're meant to focus a little bit more on, you know, crow adjacent things. So like the feathers are the sword suit, and the twigs are the wand suit, and the nests are the pentacles suit, and then the eggs are the cup suit, I believe. Yeah, this looks very much like a Four of Cups. So this deck is just, it is one that I've really been enjoying using, and it has like a rose petal-y type finish on it. You know, there are some random people in the deck that you know, feel like they move away from like crow imagery a little bit, like this merman here. But I really like that art. So like, for example, this Queen of Twigs, I really like it. And I do like the people in this deck. So yeah, this is one I've been really enjoying using. It's very cozy feeling. It is very fall feeling. And yeah. And let's see, we can check out the guidebook a little bit if you all would like. So this is, oops, apparently this card wanted to be here. So Death, and then the High Priestess. So Death jumped forward. So let's take a look at that. Yeah, and so one of the things that's interesting about this deck is, so there's sort of like a general meaning that is, knowing the truth of transformation, the crow sits perched upon the skull of a man. To many, it symbolizes fear and death, but to the crow, he sees the cycle of life springing forth from the skull in all forms. And so then the general meaning is, we all experience loss in many ways throughout our lives. It is best to acknowledge the cycle of things we find on our journey and attempt to understand the process of what we do not commonly give our attention. But the thing that's kind of cool about this guidebook is it does have, you know, sort of a description of what's on the card, a general meaning, and then it breaks it up into career, romantic, and spiritual, and then a reverse meaning a little bit as well. So yeah, this is just kind of a basic little guidebook, but even the minors have that same amount of text. So yeah, this is one of the decks that I am enjoying right now. Next deck that I'm going to show you all was actually kind of an impulse buy, if I'm being honest. It's a deck that has been out for a while, and you know, I decided to get it, you know, because I just decided to get it. But actually, since I've gotten it, I have been using it a ton. And so the deck that I'm talking about is the Cosmobeings Tarot. This deck, you know, for a long time, I held off getting this deck because I didn't think this deck was for me. Also, these cards are really big. I will tell you, when I got this deck, I was not expecting how big the cards were. I mean, that's a me problem. I'm sure plenty of people who did walkthroughs of it were very clear about that, but I just missed it. So I was kind of surprised when I saw how big these cards were. But I decided to get this deck just on kind of an impulse. I, especially in the darker time of the year, so kind of now-ish, do really enjoy like black and white decks. So I think part of it is this year, just this time of year just felt right for getting this deck. But yeah, you know, I was honestly not really expecting to like this deck as much as I did. It has, you know, creatures, and I tend to really like Kathleen's creatures, so like the Creature Tarot and Oracle. I talk a ton about them on my channel. I kind of thought that those kind of filled the creature place in my collection, but I'm really enjoying this deck. And one of the things that I'm realizing as I've started using this deck is that there is actually so much in these cards. There are so many, like, they seem like not that complex of cards, but there is so many different pieces of the art that really draw your eye with this deck, which I think is really cool. And the other reason why I didn't think I would like this deck is because of all of the imagery. So like here, I, you know, normally that's the kind of thing that kind of wigs me out a bit. But for whatever reason, with the eyes being put into like space and looking almost like more realistic eyes, it doesn't bother me as much. And so, yeah, I don't know. This is just a deck. I got it. I don't really remember when I got this deck, but it has been sitting out on my table since I got it. And it's just one of those decks that, like, you just get this feeling that you just want to use it. You just want to pick it up. You just want to shuffle cards, and you just want to pull cards, and you just want to look at the cards. At least for me, that's been my experience with this deck. And I absolutely love this moon card. I don't know why. I just love it. I think it's cool. So yeah, this was one that I did not expect to like nearly as much as I did, but like, just this deck I think has a lot of hidden, or I don't know hidden, but it has a lot of depth that you maybe don't expect for an alien deck that is in this sort of cartoon style. So yeah, this is an awesome new deck that I got. And then the last deck that I'm going to share with you all is a Kickstarter that I backed. And so this is the Sacred Powers and Goddesses. So this is an oracle deck. This is another one that I haven't seen a ton of people talking about yet. It has 41 cards. These are the beautiful backs. And then these are the goddesses that are in this deck. And so again, it has the name of the goddess. Well, it has the number, it has the name of the goddess, and it has the, sort of like an expression for that goddess. It is one of those decks that has, takes goddesses from sort of all over the world, which, I definitely have decks that do that. So that is not a deal breaker for me. And part of why I wanted this deck is because I just think the art in this deck is beautiful. It's just, these feel like miniature paintings, and it really feels like a beautiful deck. And I love that it has sort of like some darker goddesses, or like darker themed goddesses, but then some also lighter themed goddesses. And so, yeah, it also, they had a stretch goal where if we reached the stretch goal, we could get an extra card. And so it was a Frida Kahlo card. This card feels a little bit out of place to me because she was not a goddess, but that's okay. And it's always fun to have an extra card. And so, yeah, the art in this deck is super beautiful. I will say the thing that I am struggling most with this deck is actually the guidebook. And if you know me, for an oracle deck, I really do need to have a good guidebook. I am not good at, I'm not always good at using oracle decks that don't have a good guidebook. They don't tend to get used as much in my collection. And so, I think that is the thing that is kind of a drawback with this deck. It is a very, very chunky guidebook, but it just, I don't know. I'll just talk about it a little bit. Like, so for example, there are numbers for each of these goddesses. Great. That makes sense. A little easier to find, right? Well, none of the goddesses in the guidebook have numbers. And so, I think they're in alphabetical order. And so, like, I have to go find O. Or let's say I'm looking for Pele. I have to go through and then find P. Maybe. I apparently can't search the guidebook and talk at the same time. Okay, so we found Pele, right? There's no number there. The guidebook is in alphabetical order. And I do think for the most part, the goddesses are also in alphabetical order. But if you're not going to use the numbers, then I don't know why you would put numbers on the card. And I find the guidebook a little bit overwhelming. There's so much information about it. I mean, you get like, so this for Pele, you get this, 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 and then this and this, which is all great. You get, you know, information about the goddess, and you get a message, and then you get a way to honor the goddess, and then you get rituals, and then you get a tarot spread, and then you get kind of an altar. And so, you know, that's awesome. But I find the guidebook a little bit overwhelming. And, you know, maybe this is entirely a me problem. But when I go to use it, I almost don't even want to look in the guidebook because it gives me so much information and because it just feels like a lot. And I think one of the hard things also is the way the guidebook is set up is like there's not a break from one goddess to another. So, you know, this is from the prior goddess and then it just jumps in. And so it just feels like a very, very dense guidebook. And again, maybe this is silly and maybe, you know, this is not a problem and I'm just being weird. That is entirely possible. But I'm a little bit worried that the guidebook is going to make it a little bit hard for me to use this deck. So, you know, again, if anyone got this deck and you have thoughts, or if you have ideas for maybe how I can make the guidebook a little bit less overwhelming, I would be all ears because I absolutely love the art in this deck. It is just beautiful. It has, you know, goddesses, diverse goddesses, which is always good to see. And it just, you know, I think it's a well done deck. The guidebook is a lot. So anyway, that is the last deck that I wanted to show you all. Thank you all for joining me for this haul video. I would really love to hear your thoughts in the comments, especially for some of the decks that I'm struggling with a little bit. I would really love to hear your thoughts because I'd love to keep the decks that I get and I love to give decks a chance. And so, you know, this is something that I'm kind of always thinking about. Yeah, that's all I have to share today. Thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate you. If you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you could hit the like button. If you are subscribed to my channel already, thank you so much for being here. If you're not subscribed to my channel, I would, you know, if you're interested in tarot content or if you enjoyed this video, you might want to subscribe because then it'll notify you when I release a video. Most of my videos talk about tarot and all of that good stuff. Thank you all for stopping by.